Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Okay, happy Friday everybody. Weekend is almost upon us. In today's video we will be speaking a lot about the Chinese economy, including new US import bans on Chinese goods from Xinjiang, and we will be discussing the Ukraine conflict a little bit at the end, but just a heads up at the beginning, this is mostly China economy focused. As Shanghai and Beijing both loosen restrictions and open up this week, the language of state media regarding the economy is stabilization and recovery. But after the tremendous damage caused by the lockdowns and the continued hit of zero COVID policy to business and consumer confidence alike, the task ahead is Herculean. Let's frame this challenge first with a few observations. First from China economist Julian Evans Pritchard at Capital Economics this week. Quote, "Given the big shock the economy's just been through, plus the headwinds on the export side, I think it's quite challenging just to get positive growth at all this year." End quote. And then this observation from Logan Wright at Rhodium Group this week also. Quote, "Even Premier Li Keqiang was forced to observe that economic difficulties in some aspects and to a certain extent are greater than in the epidemic's first phase in 2020, while urging cadres to keep economic growth in positive territory in Q2. The recent data releases, both official and unofficial, unequivocally point to a contracting economy, possibly by larger margins than Q1 2020, when GDP contracted by 10.3% quarter-on-quarter within the official data. China's potential growth rate at present is probably closer to 3% than 5%, and China is currently growing well below that potential rate. With the property market and the financial system in distress, it may take several years to close that output gap, even if policy is more supportive." End quote. Indeed, Goldman Sachs this week lowered their own expectations of Q2 quarter-on-quarter growth to negative 7.5% annualized, and UBS and JP Morgan followed suit on Tuesday. Mr. Wright's team also concluded in a research note this week that it is clear that China is headed for a very low growth this year, at the most 2% if there is a dramatic rebound in the second half of this year, and a recession or economic contraction for the full year is becoming increasingly probable. According to Chinese map app Gaode, freight and passenger traffic volumes nationwide have fallen by around 39% year-on-year in China in March. Property sales, car sales and land use sales are all down by near or more than 50% in the same month. Asphalt output and cement production are both down by double digits in April and May, despite massive infrastructure pledges, a sign of both large disruptions as well as fallout from the property crisis. Let's continue with more economic updates for the Chinese economy. If you guys are enjoying the episode, don't forget to hit the like button, it's a huge help. And anyone who wants to help keep this channel sustainable, go the extra mile. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and crypto links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody. Japanese financial outlet Nikkei Asia broke the story this week that, for the first time ever, Apple is moving some iPad production out of China and shifting it to Vietnam after strict COVID lockdowns in and around Shanghai led to months of supply chain disruptions, which of course we've been following day by day. Nikkei writes that the US technology company has also asked multiple component suppliers to, quote, "build up their inventories to guard against future shortages and supply snags," end quote. And this next economic update touches on China-US relations too. From June 21st this year, the United States will implement a ban on goods imported from Xinjiang through the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, signed into law by US President Joe Biden in December of last year. The law includes a rebuttable presumption that all goods from Xinjiang are made with forced labor and bars their import unless it can be proven otherwise. US Customs and Border Protection officials at a special webinar for importers warned companies that the bar for clearing imports would be, quote, "very high," end quote. Bloomberg writes too that the agency will not look the other way when goods only have a minimal connection with Xinjiang, quoting the acting executive director of the task force implementing the new law, who expressed, quote, If there's a part or a piece of an input that is coming from the Xinjiang region, then that shipment will be considered containing forced labor and it will not be allowed to enter the country. End quote. On Wednesday, People's Republic of China Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian called the presumption of forced labor, quote, US lies in disregard of facts, end quote, and said that if the import ban is implemented as planned, quote, China will take forceful measures to firmly defend its own interests and dignity, end quote. It is also being reported by the Wall Street Journal that, according to sources, Germany's government has declined a request by Volkswagen AG to renew risk insurance for the car maker's operations in China. Last week, the German economics minister had also expressed that his government would not provide insurance for any projects in the Xinjiang region. This represents a real policy shift from the German government regarding German companies operating in the region. Okay, let's move to the Macau Special Administrative Region. On Wednesday, the Macau Special Administrative Region, former Portuguese colony and the world's largest gambling hub, saw one of its worst monthly gambling revenues since the global financial crisis, and just a week after the local government warned that rising job losses, the highest level since 2009, and financial strains, quote, could trigger social conflicts and destabilize the city's security, end quote. The official unemployment rate for local residents has risen to 4.5%, up from 1.8% pre-pandemic. These are official numbers, we should note. The city is the only place in the People's Republic of China where gambling in casinos is legal, and the economy is heavily reliant on casino taxes, representing more than 80% of government revenue, with the next biggest earner being tourism. Thus, travel restrictions due to COVID policies have been devastating for the city. Visitation rates in Q1 this year are still less than 20% that seen in 2019. May gambling revenue dropped 68% year-on-year to 3.3 billion patagas. Please forgive my Portuguese, approximately $400 million. This is over 87% down versus May 2019. The only bright side with the data is that this number is higher than what they saw in April, which was even worse. In April, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned that it would optimistically take several years for Macau's economy to return to its pre-pandemic levels. And last up, I just wanted to touch on this at the end of today's video. On Wednesday, Mr. Evan Medeiros published an article called China's Strategic Straddle, analyzing Beijing's diplomatic response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is one of the best examinations I've seen in one article of China's diplomatic response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a theme we have been following for months now. For anyone interested in a deep dive in this particular topic, I have the link to the article in the description below. Medeiros argues that the war created an immediate diplomatic trilemma for China as it sought to balance three competing interests: alignment with Russia, adherence to core principles of Chinese foreign policy, and need for stability with the United States and Europe. To manage this trilemma, China adopted a policy that he termed a strategic straddle, in which China tries to balance three competing interests at the same time. In practice, this straddle has manifested in strong rhetorical, informational, and diplomatic support for Russia, while at the same time, Beijing has been very careful to date to avoid providing substantial material support to Russia. Maintaining this balancing act, he argues, will be difficult as Russian needs grow. In relations with the United States and Europe, China has sought to put a floor under worsening relations, but has had limited success doing so. The one area where China has sought strategic advantage is in its ties with the global south, which he argues is suffering from economic dislocations associated with the war. China has sought to use these deprivations to generate greater solidarity in resisting US-led rules, norms, and institutions. China's ability to maintain the straddle will be incredibly challenging due to the complexities of managing competing ties with these different countries, regions, and institutions. Like I said, for anyone interested in this particular topic, I would recommend giving the full article a read. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you everybody for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.